You know, it's quite hard to put a TBR together when your only point of reference is read some books. Hi, welcome, come on in. My name is Aoife, and today I am taking you through a pile of possibilities for the amazing Readathon in June. I have to call it a pile of possibilities because there is absolutely no ideas in my head as to what we're going to be reading. All 10 of the city prompts are completely secret until they come out, and there is no way of knowing what book is going to fit into which prompt, when you should read it in the month, or if you should read it at all. If you're unfamiliar with the amazing Readathon, it is a readathon hosted by Brianna from Four Paws in a Book, and I am one of the team captains for Team General Fiction, who are going to be concentrating mainly on literary fiction, genre fiction, contemporary fiction, some women's fiction, but also historical fiction. So quite a lot of the books that I'm going to focus on for this month are going to be in those two genres. There are a couple of others that might swing in here from romance or from thrillers or from non-fiction if I need a little bit of a break, if I need a different flavour, but most of what I'm going to read is going to be in those two genres. My co-host on Team General Fiction is Cara from Cara's Bookshelf, and she's much more versed on contemporary fiction than she is on historical fiction, so she is going to have a plethora of recommendations there. But I know a bit about historical fiction, so I'm really going to try and push the boat out here with some of those. I have no idea where we're going to be going in June. I don't know what cities we're going to. I don't know what books we're going to be reading for them. I don't know what the prompts are going to be. But I do know that there are 50 sightseeing prompts that I'm going to try and get to at least 10 of. I'm going to try and spread them out across all of the different values. So I might try and do a couple more 500s than I might do of the 100s. But I'm going to see where I end up throughout the month. My first book that I'm going to try and get to in June is Homegoing by Ya Gassi. I got this book from a friend, so it's going to fit into the friend's recommendation prompt. It has a yellow cover, so it would have fit really well into our team for last year as I had to focus on yellow books, but I just never got around to it, either for sightseeing or for the prompts itself. It's a country and a culture that I don't really have a lot of experience with, and I love reading from other cultures and I love reading from other countries around the world. I might get through it a little bit slower. So I think this is going to have to be a sightseeing book just so that I can stretch it out across the month. I don't know if it's going to be a 400 or 500 or 100 prompts book, but I'm going to see where I can fit it in. I also really want to get to I Hope This Finds You Well by Natalie Sue across June. I've heard so many great things about it. It is a debut book. It came out in 2024. I think it actually just came out in the middle of May of this year. It is set in an office. It has got a kind of a workplace culture about it. It's got kind of subterfuge. It is about a woman who has always put her thoughts into her emails that she's sending out to colleagues, but has put them into white ink so that nobody can see them until they highlight over. But one day she forgets to highlight everything over, and everything that she is thinking actually goes out to the entire company. I think that's such an interesting idea. It's going to be like a half a thriller, half a contemporary book. So it's a little bit of a genre blend. I'm really excited to get this one done. A historical fiction book that I really need to get to, and one by an LGBT author, is Fingersmith by Sarah Waters. It's huge. It is well over 500 pages, so it will definitely fit that prompt. I've had it on my TBR for well over a year. I actually bought this when I was 30. This June I will be 32. That is 2 years that this has been lingering on my shelf for way too long. It is definitely within my genre as it is a historical fiction book. It has no people on the cover, so it's not really going to fit into there. I think it is set in the UK, so it is going to be in a different country to where I live. I'm intrigued by this. I know that so many people love Sarah Waters. She's not an author that I've read from before, but I know that so many people love her books. Fingersmith is not one of the ones that I initially think of when I think of her. I would immediately think more of Tipping the Velvet, but let's see how I get on with this one. Let's see if it'll fit into anything for the month. Maeve Binchy is one of my favourite Irish authors of all time, so This Year Will Be Different is definitely going on my sights for this year. This is an anthology of a bunch of short stories, so it might be a really good idea to read this across face-off weekend when I need to read as many books as possible. It is set in the winter time, so I feel like if it's going to be really warm in June, which it usually is in Berlin, this is going to be like an escape into something a little bit cooler without like plunging myself headfirst into a swimming pool. I absolutely love books that are set in Ireland. I feel like reading a book in Ireland when I am not at home is the cheapest way for me to get back home without having to spend any money, without having to go insane with my credit card. I can just sit on my couch, not have to go to the stress of getting through the airport. I can just go back home and do whatever I want there. There are about 3 or 4 other Maeve Binchy books that I actually want to put on my sides for June. I would really love to read Evening Class, which is about a group of people who come together to learn Italian. Some of them because they have an Italian partner, some of them because they are going to Italy, some of them because they just want the fun of learning. I'd also really love to reread Circle of Friends. It is by far my favourite Maeve Binchy book that I've read this far. And I love the Dublin setting because I used to go to college in Dublin, and so did these students in the book. So I feel like it's a really great connector in that it's something that I have experienced with before. It's something that I've lived through. And when you see yourself on the pages of a book, it really does draw you in a little bit more. I'd also really love to read Tara Road. It is my mother's favourite of the Maeve Binchy books. She has spoken to me so many times about how I should definitely read this one. So can we count my mother as a friend recommendation? It also has got an adaptation, and I am a traditionalist. I have to read the book before I can go and watch the movie. And it's got a couple of my favourite actors in there. It's got Andie MacDowell in there, and I love watching stuff that she's in. So I really need to read the book before I can go and watch the film. I also really want to get a new Maeve Binchy book read this year, so I'm going to try and read Firefly Summer, because you can tell from summer in the title, it is set during the summertime, and this is summertime in the Northern Hemisphere, so I love reading a book set in the season that it is in. I love reading autumn in autumn. I went through the entire seasonal quartet by Ali Smith in the season that it was set in, and I really like the atmospheric feeling of that. It's also going to give me the genre bonus for historical fiction. It's set in a small rural village in Ireland, and I don't know if that's going to count as an isolated setting, but I'm going to try and shoehorn my way in with it. I love books that are written by comedians because I find the books that they read are always going to be injected with a little bit of humour no matter what the situation is. So I'm definitely going to try and get read a couple of books by some of my favourite comedians this summer. I've got my eye on Weirdo by Sarah Pascoe. She's one of my favourite comedians in the touring at the UK at the moment, and I absolutely love the idea of it. It's about Sophie, who's working in a pub in Essex, and she has travelled the whole way across the world to go and see a guy called Chris and try and accidentally bump into him when she gets to Sydney. But he actually walks into the pub that she is working that one night while she is wrapping cutlery, and it starts an entire snowball effect. This book is involving travel, so it's going to hit into that one. I've also read from Sarah Pascoe before, so it's going to hit that sightseeing prompt. There are a couple of sightseeing prompts that I think this is going to fit into. I have no idea if it's going to be for any one of the cities. I have no idea if it's going to be a really good travel book, but it might turn out to be a really good sightseeing one. Okay, I know I just said that most books that are written by comedians are very happy and very upbeat, but I think that this might be an exception to that rule. Contacts by Mark Watson is about a young man named Jamie who gets on the sleeper train from London to Edinburgh, and he messages every single person in his contacts book to say that when he gets to Edinburgh, he is going to end his life. And across the world, while he puts his phone on airplane mode so that he can try and get some sleep and try and get his thoughts into view, every single person who he has messaged, their phone is lighting up and they're getting this message, and then they are desperately trying to get in contact with him and desperately trying to make his plan a little bit different to what he was expecting. I have no idea where this is going to fit in. I just know that it's been on my TBR for such a long time. I think I bought this maybe about 3 years ago by this stage, so it is definitely one that I really need to try and read this year. This book counts in 2 ways as a friend recommendation. One of my friends in real life sent me the entire book series and told me that I need to read it and give my opinions on it. And Margaret from The Word Nerd just recently did a video where she read the first 4 books in this series and then gave her thoughts on that. And I know that it's got an adaptation that I really want to watch, and that it is set in Regency England, and that is not a thing that I've read a lot from. So I think I really need to try the Bridgerton books. I really need to get on that hype train. It's something that every single person is talking about at the moment, and I have nothing to contribute to this conversation. And if you know me, you know I like to talk. So I'm going to try and read The Duke and I, and I'm also going to try and read The Viscount Who Loved Me. I think this is series 1 and 2 of the adaptations. I think that the series that's now just come out is actually book 4. So if I am going to get to the 4th book in the series, which is another sightseeing prompt, I need to read the 3rd book as well before I can get there. When we're talking about Face Off Weekend, when we're talking about sightseeing, the key to success is the shorter the better. Think about me. If it's short, you want it in your life. So I am going to have to try and see as many short books as I can through that weekend, or try and sightsee around the world with as many short books as I can. So I have got Antarctica by Claire Keegan on my sites. It is definitely set in an isolated setting because it is set in Antarctica. And I don't know anywhere that is more isolated in a world that is only populated by penguins. I've also got about 50 of the Babysitters Club books on my shelf. I've got them all on my Kindle. They're going to hit so many of the sightseeing prompts, it's kind of scary. I haven't properly sat down and matched a Babysitter's Club book to all of the sightseeing prompts because I genuinely think I'd be here until Christmas trying to do that, and I just want to get them read as soon as possible. Another short book that I think might work really well is The Housekeeper and the Professor. The cover is one that has always stood out to me. I think I got this as a gift from one of my friends for my birthday about 3 years ago, so it's definitely time that I need to read this one. It's translated, which would have given me the bonus last year, so technically I should have read it last year, but I didn't. It has been on my TBR for quite some time, so I think now is just the really right time to get through it. But I know that it also has quite a lot of mathematics in it. That's not something that I have a lot of experience with. It's not something that I like reading because I cannot count to save my life. So let's see how I get along with it. Another historical fiction book that I really love to read, but I think this is more of a genre blend, so I'm not sure how well this is going to count, is Bringing Down the Duke by Evie Dunmore. I think Evie Dunmore is British, but she actually lives in Germany just the same as I do. So if something like read an author who is from your country or read an author who is from the same country that you live in, if that comes up, I'm set. It's also got to do with the suffragette movement in the UK, which is something that I'm not very familiar with. I know that it happened. I know that women went out and won the vote, but I don't particularly know how. I'm not very well read up on it. But this might be a really good entryway into learning a little bit more about it and making it a little bit more accessible for me. A book that will be a reread for me is My Hot Friend by Sophie White. I've loved the Sophie White books that I've read before. I really loved her Unfiltered series. This has only got one person on the cover, so it's definitely going to fit that one. If I had been on Team Green last year, it would have fit for Team Green. It's sadly not yellow, so it wouldn't have really fit in there. This is about 3 women who struggle to make friends in their 30s, and their friendship circle is going through a lot of changes between people who are getting married, people who are having a new baby, and just a big breakdown in communication with another friend. And they all try and get together and form a new friendship circle, and that's something that I think so many people will have an experience with. Whether you are moving jobs, moving cities, moving country, whatever you're doing, so many people in their late 20s and early 30s have spoken about how difficult it is to make new friendships. This one is definitely going to make you feel like you are not the only one doing that. I would really love to read Learn by Heart by Emma Donoghue. I've read so many of her books before and I've always had a great time with them. And this one is a historical fiction book. She does write the 2 genres pretty well that I would be focusing on, but I think I'm going to go for historical fiction books this time. This is about Eliza, who is about 14 or 15 years old, and she is mixed race. Her father is British, but her mother is Indian, and she has been sent to a boarding school in Kent, basically to continue her education. It's set in the 1800s, so attitudes towards people of colour are not particularly so great. This means that Eliza is not going through a great time at school until she meets Anna, who has just come in as a new student, and the 2 of them hit it off immediately. Friendship turns into love, but also love can turn into chaos. I am so interested by this book, and I know that it is set entirely in a school, so that's definitely going to fit into one of those prompts. But I don't know if it's going to fit into a travel prompt or not. I don't know if I'm going to use it for sightseeing. I just know that this is one of the bigger priorities this time. Another bigger priority is a series that I have been saying to myself for years that I'm going to finish. And I say it now so much that I've actually put one of the books on as my host favourites. I am going to read the entire Beartown trilogy this year if it kills me. It might not all happen in June, but I'm gonna really give it my best try. This is set in the snow, so again, if it gets really warm in Berlin in summertime, I'm definitely going to escape into this one because it's going to be filled with ice and it's going to be filled with snow. It's set in Sweden, so that's a country that I don't live in. It has an isolated setting because it is set in a very small town in northern Sweden. It features a sport because this book is all about the local ice hockey team. It was a translated fiction book, so again, this would have really done well for last year, but not so much for this year. I should have read the entire trilogy last year. It would have given me so many bonus points. It would have given me so many GRC because it was one of my host favorites as well last year. So you could say that this has technically been on my TBR for over than a year, right? I'm also going to try and get a couple of classics done, if I can. I'm going to try and get to Heidi by Joanna Spiri, which a friend of mine recommended. It's set in Switzerland, a country that I've never been to, but I don't live there. It's a translated book, which is something that I always try and read a little bit more of. It is a children's book, so I feel like it's going to be a bit of a quicker read. It might do really well as a sightseeing book. I also haven't read a whole lot of Jane Austen across my life, and I know that so many people love her books, so I'm going to try and read maybe 2 of them. I'm going to put my eyes on Sense and Sensibility and on Emma. Emma was adapted into Clueless, which is one of my favourite movies from the 90s, so I feel like if I watch it, I might have a little bit more of an insight if I've read the book that it's based on. In the Amazing Readathon last year, I read 2 of the books from the Crazy Rich Asians series, so I feel like I should continue on the tradition and read Kevin Kwan's next book, which is Sex and Vanity. Now, this isn't his most upcoming book. I think he's got something to do with a wedding that is coming out in June or July of this year, so this can technically count as a backlist book. It also has got footnotes in it, which is another one of the sightseeing prompts. It's only got one person on the cover, and it is going to be filled with so much decadence, and it's going to be filled with so much opulence that I feel like I need to read this towards the end of the month when it's getting to payday, so that I can watch people be bougie and live the life that I wish that I was reading when I literally have about €2 to my name. I always like to try and discover a new author, and if that author is an Irish author, that's even better. So I'm going to try and read All We Shall Know by Donna Ryan throughout the month. It's really short, it's only about 190 pages, so that might be a really good face-off book, or it might be a really good sightseeing book. It's got a 4.2 on Goodreads, so it's definitely going to fit into that one. It has got a kind of plain and basic cover, but I would still say that it is quite eye-catching. I'm not entirely sure what this book is about though. I have tried to make sense of the plot of it 20 times. I think it is set among the travelling community where a young woman is pregnant but her husband is not the father. So I'm really interested to see what's going to happen with that one. Finally, another Irish author that I've already discovered but I want to read a little bit more of is Sally Rooney. I know that so many people love Beautiful World, Where Are You? I know that when the ARCs came out for this, there was pandemonium to get the colour that you wanted. This book I borrowed from a friend of mine, so I definitely need to give it back to her, but it also kind of counts as a friend recommendation in that way. So I'm going to see if I can get this read and then invite my friend out for a coffee or to get some cake together, and I will try and give this book back to her with having read it. With having no idea what we're going to be doing for the month of June, only knowing what the 50 prompts for sightseeing are, those are the books that I am going to try and shoehorn into my reading for June this year. What book in that pile do you think that I should make a priority? Or is there a pile of possibilities that is growing on your bedside table? If you would love to leave me a comment, but you can't think of anything you'd like to say, then just leave me the thinking or wondering face emoji, because I think that's what we're going to be doing for the majority of this month. Don't forget to like and subscribe because I have new videos up every week. Now, get on out of here.